Hello and welcome to the Sawyer Somm podcast. We are back again.
Hey, welcome. It's great to be here. And hey, it's summertime. We're having some fun. It's a time to talk about some wines that maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't, but that's my job, is to make sure that you know about them.
Yeah. So I am Adolfo Foronda, Foronda at NerdStalker on Twitter, and you are?
Chris Sawyer, Sawyer Sommelier, SawyerSomm.com, and the Sommelier Files.
Cool. So Chris, what's been up, man?
Well, a lot of stuff. I've been judging a lot of wine competitions recently. I've been going to a lot of great events. I just got back from the Wine Bloggers conference, which was fantastic. What a great sharing of information, and it was all set in Lodi. So I did bring a couple specialty wines from the Lodi region for us to taste today, but also just to be excited about what's going on. This is a good vintage. The vintage has already started here in California. The 2016 is on. And there's a lot of winemakers that are very excited about this vintage. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about some wines that are really practical for us to be drinking during the summertime and into the fall.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, Chris came with a plethora of wines. We had to actually pare it down a little bit for this podcast.
We'll be back with those.
We'll be running into that over and over because there's so many fantastic wines out there that Chris wants to talk about. Mm-hmm. So what are we starting with?
Well, we're going to start with a few whites. So once again, I was just talking about, this being harvest and it's coming on. You know what? So is a little bit more heat, and we're going to start feeling this here in California, a little bit warmer. I hate to say it, we've got some wildfires going right now, so please watch what you do with your matches and stuff, please. We want to save these vines and make sure they're not influenced by a bunch of smoke. But when we talk about this, we talk about what do the winemakers do with their their teams and stuff. To be really honest, they drink a lot of beer. It takes a lot of great beer to make great wines. And it's about the refreshment. So when we talk about wine and refreshment, the first thing I think about is white wines. And I think about crisp, wonderfully tasting, elegant white wines with a lot of acid. And so the first wine that we're going to taste today is a fantastic one from Monte Volpe. And this is from up in Mendocino County. This is a Tokai Friulano. This is really an amazing guy, Greg Graziano, who made this wine. This is the 2014 vintage. And one of the reasons that I brought it today is I went out and bought this wine. I'll tell you why. Greg Graziano, I just judged the Mendocino wine competition. Greg Graziano's Carignan won Best Red of the whole competition. So that's over the Pinot Noirs from Anderson Valley, over the Cabs from Inland. That Carignan's an amazing wine, and it was my team that sent it to the final round, and hey, the other judges liked it too, so it wasn't just our opinion. But so that Saturday morning, I stopped by the winery, and I picked up a few bottles of that Carignan, but you know what? I couldn't go anywhere without this. This is really good. This is the thing to start the day with. So we're going to start it right now with this little Monte Volpe Tokai Friulano. So I got poured some for you too, Adolfo. Here, cheers.
Salud.
Salud. First thing I get, there's just the beautiful smell of this. It's a little waxy, but there's this melon aroma to it that I just love. And look at the color. It's, it's just a little bit of the kind of hay bale color. So aromatic. All three of these wines that I brought today for these whites are very aromatic. They're very lovely wines. And the fact is, they're not Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc, which is the most typical of the grape varieties. I'd put Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio up there. But when you get into these other grape varieties, they're so fun. And that's what summer and going into Indian summer is all about, is just having fun, sharing these kinds of wines with people, taking something like this to a party and just being the new king of the party by busting this out and people going, I want some more of that. That's amazing. So it's enlightening people. So Tokai Friulano. This is from the northern part of Italy originally. Greg Graziano is a big fan of the Italian varieties. He brought a lot of these cuttings back here to the United States. He's been a big benchmark for us as far as Italian varieties in the United States. And he's done a great job with this. So I'm going to take a little sippy here.
Yeah, for you people listening out there, it's really pretty label too. It's like this yellow sort of odd-shaped label, this sort of diamond sort of thing on it, Monte Volpe. Very nice, yellow and green.
It's got some great flavors in there too. It's got a little bit of that papaya and a little bit of the peach, but the melon is really dominant. And it's so interesting. It's more exotic. It's just fun. And for me, I'm thinking already about a lot of shellfish with this. I think if you did a really nice oyster layout, but you kind of went a little bit higher in the, the citrusy kinds of effects of the sauce, if you're going to use one on that. And I think that would be great. It would also be very, very good with just some pasta with fresh fish involved in that. And also think about heirloom tomatoes. This is the time right now. We're getting really into heirloom tomatoes, and chefs are all over this right now. You're also getting a lot of fresh citrus in these kinds of dishes. And it's not about the heavy foods right now. It's about these kinds of lighter ones that we really work with. And this is a great one also with cheeses. I would be doing this with goat cheese and a great salad with a little bit of a citrus-based dressing.
So, Chris, we were talking earlier. What band and song would you pair this with, huh?
Well, you got to get really into the bands and the songs. Can you get us?
Yeah, don't worry about it. People listening, don't worry about
that. Don't worry about that. You got to be light and fun. So I would be going back a little bit to some of the funner music that we used to listen to. I think about Bananarama and bands like that were just fun. I went and saw Culture Club the other night, and I got to say one thing about Culture Club.
How was that show, man? It looked awesome.
Boy George still has it. Okay?
Really?
There's no doubt. And one thing that I really understood about the band when I saw them live is I love Do You Really Want to Hurt Me and Time Clock of the Heart. I love that song so much. But when you got into Color by Numbers and these different kinds of songs they were singing, you were actually getting more into this kind of calypso kind of style of music. And you started watching him and going, you know what?
Yeah, he was
this would be great.
Influenced by it.
And so start going into Color by Numbers, the whole album and this bottle. You got a great pairing going on here, especially when you talk about this kind of seafood and fresh fruits and all these kinds of things that you think about with going down to dancing to a calypso song and even Boy George singing that song.
Yeah, that's actually a great pairing.
Lovely. So the second wine that I'm going to taste this on is a Vermentino. And this is from one of my good friends, Jim, who makes this wine in for the Ovaggio label. And this is it's from Lodi, and it's Vermentino. So this is a 2012 Vermentino. He's got a newer vintage out right now, but this came from kind of my little stash. And why I like Vermentino is, once again, it is an Italian variety, but let it be known that there is also part of it that you'll find in France called roll, and that's R-O-L-L-E. Roll is Vermentino. Italian Vermentino is the same thing as French roll, and roll is mainly used as a blending grape in France, whereas this is a dominant grape, especially in the northern kinds of parts of the nation. But Vermentino is so good. It just has that crisp acidity, freshness, great kind of body and texture to it, but it's not too big. It's much more about crispness and acidity. So let's try this out. I'm going to get our little dumpy bucket here. And unfortunately, we're going to finish that bottle off later, but I'm going to pour a little bit of mine out. Here's a little bit for you, Adolfo. And great thing about Jim and the Ovaggio label is I've been doing things with Jim for so long. He's just a great guy, and I love the fact that he gets what Lodi is all about. And it was really a fascinating thing for all of us wine bloggers to be there this weekend. We started actually on Thursday night, and it was so fantastic to really be a part of all of the great lectures and seminars and tastings and just having fun. And I will discuss one thing that I did there later, and that was DJing a great party. And I will say a little shout out in a few minutes for that. But Ovaggio, great brand, great label, not very expensive. We like that too. And the other thing is about that that Monte Volpe. I mean, you're looking at maybe $14 max. It's usually around $12, and the same is true with this wine. So you're talking about wines that you can not only buy one bottle of, but 2 bottles is no problem. So different price points, a lot more freshness, fun, and that's just what I want in my wines during the summertime. Big, heavy Chardonnays, oaky, buttery kinds of flavors. It just doesn't really work with the ways that we eat during the summertime and into the fall. Sorry, and I must say one thing: it is almost football season. We will be talking about football a little bit too. Yeah. There's a great story done on Chef Janine Falvo and I recently in the Tailgater magazine from the East Coast about a story that was written on us about us for the 49ers some years ago, and we kind of did a different version of it and updated that for this tailgating magazine, and it's really cool. So once again, here's this amazing wine that we get to really work with here. So this is an indigenous grape to the northern part of Italy, but what makes a Lodi very interesting is the fact that they grow 100 different types of grape varieties in Lodi. When you talk about Napa Valley, what's your first thing that comes into mind? Cabernet Sauvignon. Then there's also Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. There's Zinfandel, believe me, what's left of it, and I wish there was more of it left there, but that's not the place for it anymore. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. But the fact is that what they're growing out in Lodi is kind of one of the hidden treasures of California right now. And I think that the more you look at it, the more you investigate the great flavors of Lodi and what's going on there, and the great people that make these wines and people that are very committed. I'll tell you one thing, it's really hot there. I know. I'll tell you why I know. I had this album. It was actually this really cool, it was kind of like the single of Peter Shelley's Homo Sapien. It was a great single. It was not his Major Tom or anything like that, but it was a great album. I had just bought it a week ago just to play it up there for this DJing event that I had. But the fact was, I left it on top of the on the record player inside my car, and it just melted the thing.
So that was true. That was yours.
Yeah, it was mine. It was mine. And I've had a few people suggest that I make a cup out of it, or maybe I make a kind of a plate for crackers or something. We'll see. We'll create it into something. Right now, it's tacked to the wall inside my cellar. So we will talk a little bit more about that as it progresses. But
wow, this stuff is very different. The Avaggio is very different than the Montevolpe.
It is, and you don't smell the waxiness on this nose like you did with the Montevolpe. Montevolpe just has that, that Tokai Friulano. There's actually a lot of Tokai Friulano in the old days here in California. Not that much anymore. That's kind of gone down in popularity, where Vermentino is starting to go up. Not only is this a great vineyard that gets this wine or these grapes from, but also there's some nice stuff growing in not just up in the foothills, but also in Carneros and different places. Las Barices vineyard is a fantastic example of that, and I just love it because it's so fresh and wonderful.
I think I'm drinking this with Violent Femmes. Maybe like a Blister in the Sun or something.
Blister in the Sun. That's a great one. Boy, we might have to crank that one later. Actually, let's just crank the whole album. I love that Violent Femmes album. One of the best ever made in our lifetimes. And so funny, you still listen to it today, and it still makes a lot of sense. The fact is that that's another one that you want to hop around. You want to really jump and get into that music. And the fact is, you're going to need to cool down a little bit. And this is that cool wine that's going to take you to that next level.
Nice.
So
2012 Avaggio Vermentino.
Yeah, and this is really in that $12 to $14 range. Fabulous wine. You can find it in really good wine shops across the nation, or you can just look up uvaggio.com. Actually, is it Uvaggio? Yeah, just uvaggio.com. Don't want to get that wrong. Beautiful. And you know what? I'm getting a little bit out of it now. A little bit of some spices in here. A little bit of that white pepper.
Yeah. You're right. And for the Graziano family, it's GrazianoFamilyOfWines.com.
There you go. A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Graziano
URL.
Family of Wines.com.
Yeah, it's a lot.
All right. The last one we're going to taste is a beautiful, beautiful bottle.
Beautiful
and this is
listeners, I
VML.
wish you could see this. This label is gorgeous.
Yeah, if you're just listening, that's too bad, because this is a beautiful. It's got butterflies and flowers, and my good friend Virginia Marie Lambrix is the winemaker, so that's why it's the VML. She's a fantastic winemaker from Sonoma County, and this is a Gewürztraminer that she makes with grapes from. It's a very limited selection of grapes of Gewürztraminer. They're still left in Russian River Valley, but they were there at one point. I'd say if you really, really are smitten by Gewürztraminer, two places that I would say: A, go to Gunlock Bundschuh in Sonoma Valley, because they've been making that wine forever. But that's also a German family, so you got to support them, and it's 100%. Always dry. And this one's a very good example of that style too. The other one is just take a car trip and go up to Anderson Valley. Anderson Valley has the best selection of Gewürztraminer, I think, in the United States. It's fantastic, and they've gone with it from way back in the late 70s, and they just, there's still about 90, I think there's 90 acres of this still left up there. Wow. Of Gewürztraminer, and you'll see it by Navarro and Greenwood Ridge and Hush and all these other great producers that make some of this stuff. But we're going to taste one from Russian River Valley right now. Wow. So pretty label, and believe me, Virginia is a pretty girl, great winemaker, good mom. She has I think she has 2 kids now, if I'm not mistaken. And
it smells like a Gewürz.
And the funny thing about Gewürztraminer is just it does come off a little bit crazy. It's like if you like pineapple and grapefruit, especially grapefruit. It's really one of the things that it smells like right off the top is just fresh grapefruit. Oh my God.
Apple Jolly Rancher.
Oh, so good. It's got that little minerally kind of note to it too. So you can see that the people that originally grew this vineyard knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, they put it on an amazing piece of property, and wow, I'm loving this. These aromas are amazing. I'll tell you one thing that I learned a lot about Gewürztraminer is how it pairs with foods that you would never think could be paired with anything, and especially asparagus, broccoli.
No kidding.
These types of foods that are a little bit different than, just pour me some bubbles or give me a beer.
That makes sense.
It's cool.
Counterbalance.
But when you really look at the acidity in here and how you would cook some of those things, especially with this kind of Asian fusion with broccoli, and you really get into it. And the fact is, if you go to Alsace or many parts of Germany where Gewürztraminer is very prevalent there, and we tasted a lot of great Gewürztraminer at the bloggers conference, the wine bloggers conference, provided by the Alsace group. And so if you want to hashtag that, it's drink Alsace. But that's what we're drinking here, is that style of Gewürztraminer, is an Alsatian style. And when you really look at Alsace, one of the most important things about it is it's #2 in all of France for the highest concentration of Michelin star restaurants are in the Alsace region. And the reason for that is they're really into pork, they're really into fresh vegetables and fruits. And this is exactly what you want with that.
That's good living right there.
And this is also, a lot of the stuff that we have during the summertime is this freshness. And you get into Vietnamese cuisine, you get into Mexican cuisine, all these types of things that are really just prepared fresh for you right there. And this is it. This is the kind of wine that would be a great complement to those. And as we get into a little bit of the cooler regions, and especially where fruit and vegetables are not as prevalent right now, and you get into different types of the year, when asparagus is really popping up, and that's those asparagus soups and just grilled asparagus on a plate. with charcuterie and all that. This is the kind of wine you want in your hand.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I love this one.
I'm thinking B-52s, rock lobster, maybe with this.
I like that. I'm gonna go see the B-52s, and if you guys need tickets,
Ooh la la.
Rodney Strong coming up soon.
Nice.
B-52s, and I'm so there.
Are you kidding me?
Nope, not kidding you.
Awesome.
They're coming. Saw him not that long ago. Love to meet Fred Schneider again. We partied one time.
Wow.
I love his song Monster.
Wow. Legend.
It's a super legend one, but it's a fun one indeed. So that was our white wine. So let's take one last look at them real quick. We have
let's recap.
The Monte Volpe. That's a Tokai Friulano. It's a fantastic one, 2014 vintage from Mendocino County. The second one that we had was the Uvaggio, and that was from Lodi. And this was the Vermentino, which is the 2012. But like I said, this is my cellar selection because I wanted some. And you guys got to hear about why Vermentino is hot right now and why you need to be drinking more of it this summer and into the Indian summer. And then the last one that we tasted was the VML, and that is the Gewürztraminer. That's a fantastic vintage with a very small lot taken from a certain vineyard in Russian River Valley. And this is a limited release, and I think it's just vmlwines.com, if I'm not mistaken, to buy that wine. And believe me, this label wins the award for best label of them all, of these three.
Yeah,
it's just killer. It's
definitely
so pretty.
beautiful.
So with that being said,
so Chris, how about some news? Some
Okay.
wine news here.
okay, well, first of all, like I said, I did just finish judging the Mendocino wine competition. That was the 39th annual. So we are talking about a lot of big things. We did honor a really great guy, Ben Pearson, who passed away just about a month ago. He was a great legend in our wine industry, especially up here in Northern California. And I just want to give a shout out to Ben because he's a great guy, and I cheers to him often. He will be missed, and we're going to do the Harvest Fair wine judging, which is coming up in a few weeks. That's a big deal. But before that happens, the biggest thing happening is Sonoma Wine Country Weekend, which is happening right over Labor Day weekend.
Nice.
So I've been selected as one of the star sommeliers.
Cool.
I helped
Cool.
develop that whole program some years ago, and it's nice to be back on the team.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on that team, especially in my
Huge
county.
honor.
That's
Huge
where I was
honor.
born and raised. Russian
honor.
River Valley is where I grew up, and for me to be part of this and just to be supported and to support all the great people out there, that's a fantastic thing. The other thing I want to say is that yesterday, which was Thursday, and we're live here on Friday just to get you into the weekend and to get you all pumped up for the rest of August and into September. Yesterday was National Pinot Noir Day. And so on my Instagrams, Facebook, and definitely on Twitter, I did a lot of posts on some cool areas. I talked about Russian River Valley and Sonoma County, obviously, Anderson Valley, which I love their Pinot Noirs. I talked about Santa Barbara County, and I love those guys. And I posted some fun pictures. So if you get the chance, look at Christopher Sawyer Sommelier on my Facebook, or if you're on Instagram or Twitter, it's Sawyer Sommelier. So check out those pictures; they're really fun, and there's a lot of
SawyerSomm.com.
Yeah, SawyerSomm.com. There's some really cool. There's some really cool winemakers in those pictures too, and great wines. I will say that. With that in mind, what I wanted to do next is to go to a different Pinot Noir area, and a lot of people know this area. And it's Willamette Valley, Oregon. For me, I spent a couple years of my life in Oregon. The rest of it's been here and in Sonoma County, and also obviously I went to UC Davis where I learned a lot about wine. But the fact is that what has happened in Oregon and Willamette Valley over the past 40 to 50 years is a big deal. The Pinot Noir there is the top of the mark for the world. When they have a great vintage there, it's up there with Burgundy. It's some amazing plantings, amazing wines, amazing people with a lot of vision that goes back. Last year was the year that marked the 50-year anniversary of the planting of the first Pinot Noir grapes in Oregon. And that was by David Lett. And he went to UC Davis too, just like me. But he was told by the people at UC Davis, by the great doctors who studied a lot, that it is impossible to grow grapes in that cool climate kind of area. It's impossible. What did he do? He got some cuttings and he went there and he did it anyways. And look at where we're at today. 50 years later.
Half century.
We're talking about rock star Pinot Noirs that the globe knows. So we're going to taste 3 of them today, and I'm going to get us some.
But first, we're going to get into some news here real quick.
Okay. Let's do
All right,
this.
Chris, this comes from the Seattle Times. The headline is Pennsylvania supermarket sells wine, a first since Prohibition. So officials say a grocery store in Pennsylvania has become the first supermarket since Prohibition to sell wine in the state. A Giant Eagle store in suburban Pittsburgh began selling wine Friday. Only state-owned liquor stores or kiosks had been allowed to sell wine. The nationwide constitutional ban on alcohol that lasted from 1920 to 1933. Under a new law, customers can buy up to 3 liters of wine to go from businesses that hold restaurant or hotel liquor licenses. The Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board says it has approved more than 80 supermarkets, restaurants, and hotels to sell wine to go. The licenses became active this week, and sales also began at sub shops and eateries, including Big Woody's in Allentown, and Super Sub and Six Packs in Dubois.
Oof, I just like the way you read that. It's a big deal. Pennsylvania has been one of the hardest. I mean, when you bring that up to winemakers, they just shake their head. They will never learn.
I had no idea.
Well, I'll tell you, when I worked.
Well, there's the Utah thing, right? Where they do the state
that's
stores.
Mormon. That's Mormon. No, don't go there.
Yeah.
That's a great movie, though.
SLC
Punk,
right?
Yep, that was a great movie.
Fantastic.
You want to see the best skateboarding movie?
One of the top punk movies.
And it is definitely a punk movie, and it is really good. Matthew Lillard was in that.
Kidding.
He was the main guy. That. And
I think he's from there originally.
Yeah. So it was.
So anyways, Pennsylvania.
So the problem with Pennsylvania is they really wanted to control everything. The government wanted to control everything. Here in California, it's very liberal. Oregon, West Coast, we're very liberal here. Different states have different agendas. The fact is that when I worked at the lodge at Sonoma as the sommelier there for 10 years, the people that made those decisions would come and stay at the lodge, and they would go around, and it was their opinion on which wines could come in through the government. And so it was a very strange thing that you had a few people making the decisions for all of the state versus people having their own palates and being able to just buy what they want to. And so there was a lot of restraint there, and to have this pass in that state is a big deal. This is a big turning point for the nation. So with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about Pinot Noir. So the first one that we've got here is the Copper Mountain Vineyards. It's a 2013.
Is that Cooper?
Cooper. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is Cooper Mountain. Sorry, I could barely see because of the shiny light there. But 2013 Pinot Noir. Why I wanted to start with this one is just because it's biodynamically farmed. So up in Oregon, they do a great job with sustainable farming. That's kind of the baseline there. Most of the vineyards are really moving towards organics and biodynamics.
Okay.
Biodynamics means that instead of just being organic, like we go to the grocery store, those are organic vegetables, meaning that they don't have any pesticides, herbicides, things like that used on them. Versus biodynamics, where you're paying attention to these vines 365 days of the year. And you're doing all these treatments that are based on using raw materials that are very good for the plants, that they need these kinds of things. This was, kind of a whole theory that was based on Rudolf Steiner's research back in the 1920s that saved a lot of the German crops at the time. So this is just a neat wine. So let's taste it. Very pretty. The one thing about these wines right here, these are not the $45 ones. I wanted you to have a glimpse at the other styles of Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley. That means that you don't have to spend 45 and above just to be excited by Oregon's Willamette Valley and Pinot Noir, because there's a lot of really good value ones. And I believe this is right around the $40 range right here. And beautiful nose, a lot of berries in there.
Yeah. Cool.
A lot of strawberry. A little bit of earthiness in
Yeah,
there.
the earthiness is fantastic. I love that.
It's like that REM. You need something REM here.
100%. Yeah, great call.
Maybe even
Athens, Georgia.
Maybe go
Pretty much just Athens, Georgia altogether.
Yeah, maybe go back a little ways.
Flat Duo Jets.
Chronic, like go to one of my favorite songs by them of all time, "Stumble," and that was oh man, if you listen to
deep.
"Stumble" by REM, you're gonna go, why was this never a hit? But back in college days in Athens, Georgia, it's what put them on the map. That was like brilliant song, but it had that earthy tone to it, and you just went, wow. But it was fast paced, and it was real. It just made you want to move, and there was nothing wrong with that song. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Beautiful wine, love that. So nice example. So good.
That's fantastic.
Second sample we're gonna taste here.
We can't overlook the what is it? The man.
Oh, the man.
The man. Yeah.
There you go.
For you people listening out there, what we got? This is Michelangelo's man.
He's the man. It's the muscles moving. It's everything. It's the muscles inside your mouth that are moving with this wine, and especially your palate. Your palate's really alive. The second wine we're going to taste is really one of the names of Willamette Valley that you have to know. That's Adelsheim. Adelsheim, Adelshheim, Adelsheim. David Adelsheim was one of the pioneers that went there after David Lett planted the first vines up there. But he went there just understanding the possibilities of Oregon's Willamette Valley are really true, and that there can be great world-class wines made there. And David and his whole entire staff, I gotta say one thing, give some credit to where credit's due. This is a beautiful label here. It's a little bit smaller than usual, but it has a beautiful, which way am I going? There we go. The art on his labels are always done by his daughter, and that's Ginny.
Describe it for the listeners.
So it's a beautiful sweeping landscape of pretty much looking down from one of their vineyards on, I believe it even says where this vineyard is on their property. This is Quarter Mile Lane Vineyard that they source from. So beautiful, kind of
almost.
Yeah, it is. It's just they took it from her painting. She's a wonderful artist, and I think that's part of the charm of Oregon's Willamette Valley. And just to get a kind of a sense of where we're talking about, you fly into Portland or you go to Portland and you drop down, you go basically directly southwest from Portland. So you're going down towards Beaverton, where Nike became so big, and then you're dropping down south of that. And there's an interesting thing, and in my book, which will be out next year, I do a whole chapter on Oregon's Willamette Valley. It's very different from other appellations because David Adelsheim and the other great people who became the original planters up there, Dick Erath and Sokol Blauser and all of those great brands that were in the original days. They wanted the Dundee Hills, which is this very special area where kind of the first original plantings were done, to become the appellation. But David and some of the others broke out and said, we need to make the whole area an appellation first and then make these sub areas next. And he was absolutely right. And for that reason, Willamette Valley actually crosses the lines of 5 different counties. So that's very different from what we have here in California. We do not cross that many lines. And actually, if you go up into Oregon's, or actually Columbia Valley, and everyone goes, oh, that's Washington. No, there's actually some that's in Oregon for Columbia Valley too. So it goes along the Columbia River. So it's a little bit different up there. It is cool at night, but also can be very hot during the summer. I remember being at the International Pinot Noir celebration one time, and my best friend was the guy with the squirt gun and fan setup, where he kept squirting me like that, and I just wanted more. Just bring it,
that's
bring
heaven.
it. And it was good.
How about that nose?
It's just elegance and finesse. There's so many berries in here. This nice cherry plum combination in here. The great thing about Oregon's Willamette Valley too is that it's not just about grapes. It's where hazelnuts are grown. It's where cranberries can be found. It's where a lot of fruit trees can be found. And that's what makes it a very special area. And when you go to Portland and to this area, you're having fresh fruit and vegetables at all times. And the fish is coming from the Columbia or from the ocean. And so you can't lose with these wines. And this is a great one to be doing salmon with. Think about that.
What are you thinking? I'm thinking Iron Maiden, Run to the Hills. At first I was thinking Hot for Teacher with Van Halen, but then...
I think that's a little heavy for them.
But yeah.
I think Run to the Hills, we get into some really crazy cabs and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
We talk mountain, like Howell Mountain, Napa Valley cab, and then we're talking Run to the Hills.
What are you thinking here?
This is a lot more finesse. This is... You know what I like about it is it has a lot of different clones in here. So there's a lot of different characters in here. So you got to have, can't just be one, it can't just be about the lead singer. Not going to happen. It's got to be about this vineyard and why this band works together. So I'm thinking Rush.
You thinking Rush? I'm thinking Pixies.
I'm thinking, yeah, Pixies.
Caribou by the Pixies.
Okay, I'll go there.
No.
Kim Deal does
Rush, fantastic.
Kim Deal does have a little bit of my heart. So.
Yeah.
Just
because like the initial nose is big, and then you come back to it, and then it's chill, and then it's chill, and it's just smooth, like you said. Could go Roxy Music, actually.
But there's that amazing acidity and that kind of wall at the end that just you hit it, and you're like, oh wow, what is that? It's penetrating everything inside my system right now, and I just love it. I want more, and I can't wait for that next sip. And that's what this is about. It's a little bit leaner in style, and that's why this is really in that $30 to $40 range versus that $60+ range. The great thing about Pinot Noir in the United States is we're really actually not talking about over $100 like we do about Cabernet Sauvignon and some of the elite Rhone style wines. We don't need to talk about that with this kind of wine. And the fact is, doing it with really nice fresh fish on the grill would be a really nice complement to this one. So, and plus it's so nice to smell. It does have that little rose petal kind of note.
It really is.
Maybe Guns N' Roses should have been talked about, but they did play recently in San Francisco. The same night I saw a Culture Club, Guns N' Roses was playing. Interesting.
I'm so glad to hear that the positive Culture Club review.
I thought he was amazing. I thought the whole band, it was the same band.
That's wonderful.
Where do you find that? And singing as good as ever. And I thought his definite energy was all there. So the last one we're going to taste is Montanore, and this is 2014 vintage. The last one was 2014 too. The first one that we tasted was the 2013.
Montanore.
So this is Montanore. This is from their estate in Willamette Valley. Let's see, what's their website is montanore.com. Good thing about this wine too, and a lot of these wines, let's check the Adolsheim. It is, I'm looking at the alcohol levels on here. This is a 13% alcohol. Wow. The Adolsheim 13.5. And
this is, the Cooper is 13% as well.
The Cooper is 13%. When you go to Burgundy, that is basically about the alcohol level in Burgundy too. So they are on the same part of the globe. If you followed across all the way to France, it's on the same line as Burgundy. So what they have is sunlight, and actually a little bit more sunlight per day, but it's cooler. Especially as you get into the bulk of the harvest, because the problem is it starts to rain up there. And that's why when you compare California Pinot Noirs and Oregon Pinot Noirs, they're risky up there. And they have taken those risks. And when they come out with these great vintages like the 2013, 2014, you just taste it. I mean, there's a reason these guys are committed up there, and they do such a good job. So let's taste this one real quick. So I think this is a little bit different. This has got a little bit more of this like kind of cherry candy kind of note to it. A little bit more earthy tones to it. I like it just by the nose. I have not tasted this wine in
much more earthy.
Yeah, a few years.
Wow.
It's kind of funny because the cherry kind of follows through all the way through from the smell to the finish. And it is very candied. So this is one that I would say really needs to go with food. It's not just, I don't know if I'd want to be sipping on this all by itself. I think that a food pairing would be very nice. And I think that that food pairing would be duck. And I think that a really nice duck dish or Chinese food. I think that a really nice Chinese dish would be good, especially something with duck in it from Chinese, of different styles. But there's one that I'm really into in Sacramento. I was up there with my good friend George recently, and Big Fats PHAT is that place is the real deal. I mean, they celebrated their 50-year anniversary, I believe, a couple of years ago. That's real Asian cuisine and Chinese food at its finest, and San Francisco and places like that. But this is the kind of wine that
Mission
really
Chinese. I got to give props to Mission Chinese.
Okay, there we go. But definitely if you like cherry flavors, you're all over this wine. And I think that's a very good example. Sorry, that's the Montanore. There we go. And it's got the big M and the vines, and then it's a beautiful, beautiful little package as well. And you can see the vine, like the kind of root stock there. It's really interesting, and they really do put a lot of emphasis on being organic, biodynamic, and beyond sustainable in Oregon. I really give them a lot of kudos for that. And yesterday I celebrated a lot of great Pinot Noirs, and I will continue to do that through the weekend and through this year, because Pinot Noir Day is just, it's a interesting little thing that we just enjoy it. But the fact is we should be drinking Pinot Noir on a daily basis. So, and
for all of you out there, we'll have all the details in the show notes, URLs, how to spell the names of all this stuff and everything that Chris is talking about.
That earthy tone really does come out though.
All right, Chris.
Okay.
Some news here about from USA Today. From the Today Show.
Let's listen.
Does the color of your wine influence your hangover? Here, so there's no doubt drinking too much wine will lead to a ferocious headache the next morning. But is the type or even color of your wine a factor there? Maybe, according to research conducted by Steve Alsop, director of National Drug Research Institute at Curtin University in Perth, Australia. Some people find that drinks with high levels of congeners, correct me if I'm saying this thing correctly, forgive me, make them feel worse. And there is some evidence supporting this, said Alsop. Congeners give color and flavor to various alcoholic drinks. Drinks high in congeners tend to be darker, like red wine, brandy, or whiskey. Alsop also noted that closely examined congeners as a potential factor in the severity of your hangover. So in the study, they used bourbon and vodka. They did the placebo with the vodka, and they found that the bourbon was obviously the one that gave you pain. The percentage of alcohol is one factor. White wines usually contain between 9 to 14%, like a German Riesling, which has 8 to 9%, whereas reds contain between 12 to 16%, said Gino Sommelier at the Forge. Also consider what's really in your wine. Some cheap wines apparently might have added tannins, compounds, grape skins, or synthetic tannins, which can interfere with serotonin levels and make your hangover feel worse, explained the guy. Tannins are typically higher in reds. So if you're going for a cheaper wine, you might want to choose white. Although I don't subscribe to that.
Well, I'll tell you this. I like both red and white. I am not biased. I like rosés too. The more manipulated a wine is, the more it's going to affect you in a bad way. The more natural it is, it just happens in the right way. Think about this. What we have here in America is very different than Europe. When a lot of the winemakers that I met from Italy, for instance, would tell me stories about, as a child going to school, their water was actually, they had wine put in their water just because it was more pure than the water itself.
Yeah.
And so that's how they were using that to help them. And here we are manipulating things in some cases, especially mass-produced wines, and you're buying products to put in there or to use with them, like tannins and acid and things like that, especially acid. You can purchase acidity.
Or sulfur, right?
Yeah, and you can do that. The way you spray sulfur on vines and how it affects you too. So the more purity in the making of the wine and the less intervention by the winemaker, the better the wine will be and the more pure it will taste. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I know a few people that are the people that actually do tweak wines, and they would argue with me until the cows come home. Yeah. But that's not the point. Yeah. The fact is, what I would want for people to drink is the most pure wine possible.
Well, you turned me on to the organics, which were fantastic. I was surprised because I've worked at a winery where I have literally dumped sulfur into the grapes, into the wine after the crush.
Yep.
But some of the organic wines were fantastic.
Yeah. So I mean, it's when you go to the store and you buy organic,
they both were fantastic.
Avocado versus a treated avocado.
Cow.
So let's get into just like fun stuff now. Wow. Okay. So we could talk about Cab, Merlot, Syrah, and all these kinds of different things. But really, we're really focused right now on summertime and going into Indian summer. We're talking about, all these great things going on with baseball, with football, with music and great concerts that are happening right now, tailgate parties, barbecues with people when you still can go outside. Yeah. This is the time to be talking about Zinfandel. Wow. And that is California's trademark grape variety. And the fact is that it was really the first grape variety brought here by the settlers right around the time that gold was discovered, and all of these great things about why we started to learn that we could grow grapes here was because of Zinfandel and later Petit Syrah and how that all went down. The grape came over originally in the 1820s and was really propagated right outside of Boston. So when people started to settle here in California, they needed one thing. They needed a hardy red grape that could prove itself, because no one knew what the climate conditions were like here. I mean, this was just the first touch of California back then in the 1840s, 1850s, and really settlers were coming here. And most of them were just immigrants, obviously, that wanted to, when they saw these kinds of amazing valleys and lush landscapes, that they really wanted to plant grapes like they had at home, but they couldn't get those grapes over here. So what do we use? We use Zinfandel. So one of the great wineries in Lodi that I have nothing but the ultimate respect for is Clinker Brick. Let's see, how can I shine this? It's kind of hard because they do have a shiny label. Clinker Brick Winery. Great story here about what Clinker Brick means. It's actually this kind of interesting brick that's from the Lodi area, and it actually clinks together. That's how fine it is. That when you put two of those bricks together, they actually clink. And so I'll go back to the Wine Bloggers Conference, and I got to say one thing: I was honored to go back in time a little bit and be asked to be the special DJ at Clinker Brick. Yes. And they opened, this was their patio's debut with me spinning there.
Oh, you love this, Chris.
And 50 of my great peers, the great wine blogging community being there and dancing something crazy.
No, you were born for that.
I was born for this. Adolfo knows that I've been a DJ for a long time. A lot of people out there in the industry do not know that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, every time he's down in my cellar, we're listening to more stuff. And I bought a new turntable for this. I brought these huge speakers that just, it was just awesome. But I got to say the one thing that the family that owns Clinker Brick, Steve and his wife and his daughter, were all there. They were having a great time. They were partying with us, and we were drinking their wine. So when I think about great old vine Zinfandel, and that's the most important thing to me, I love old vine Zinfandel. I put old vine Zinfandel number 2 on my scale of my favorite wines. If I'm on a deserted island, what would you want, Chris? Number 1, Pinot Noir. Just because it's hard to make, and if you don't make it right, it just doesn't work. But if you make it right, it might be one of the greatest things you've ever had in your life. Number 2, Old Vine Zinfandel, because it's priceless. Nothing tastes like the vines in this one vineyard. Nothing tastes like the old vines from that vineyard down the street, just because they're planted 2 to 3 generations before us.
I have to testify. I've heard Chris talk about old vines over and over and over again.
Well, you go to Zap with me, the Zinfandel Advocates and Producers, and Clinker Brick is a great producer from the Lodi area that is part of the Zap contingency. And I love going there. And they were so fascinated by when they saw me, because they're so used to seeing me at Zap. And when they find out I'm the DJ at their place and breaking their new patio in, and I did it in style. It was great. So I want to just taste this wine real quick, because Zinfandel, especially from the Lodi area, I mean, it's a huge player. It is the epicenter of this. What's different is it's not the rolling hills. It's not different like that. What was in these places, in some of the ones that aren't the older vines, was a bunch of watermelons. That's where the watermelons were grown in California, is in the Lodi area. And every now and then you find 10 years, 15 years later, after they pulled those watermelons out, some of those old seeds that were sitting there, those start sprouting again. And so then all of a sudden you're walking through.
It's a tough area too.
It is tough.
Everything. Tough people, tough
it's
vines,
just,
tough everything.
You know, Creedence Clearwater sang a little song about the place, you know, and we like to think that it's just, you know, I like the song Susie Q a little bit more when I think about Zinfandel from Creedence, but I don't really think about, you know, Lodi, the song, because it's just kind of a downer. Because actually when you get there and you meet all these winemakers, you get so inspired, and they're just great people that really care, and they live in these conditions just to make these kinds of wines. And so with this black fruit, deep, dark, even a little bit of the black olive on this nose that I just am loving, you know. So
it seems like one of those wines that you work your way up to. You know what I mean? It's not something that like a newbie can just dive into, right?
No. This is a very big wine. It's got some, you know, it's bursting with flavors. It's not low in alcohol. It's 15.8.
It's wonderful.
But this is why you have barbecues, you know, and why you pull this out with that big rack that's sitting there on that cue that you're going to cut those ribs out of, and then you're just going to munch on them. And you're going to have such an amazing time celebrating this wine, the great food, and the friendships that you have of all the people that are right there with you. So that's why I feel like Zinfandel this time of year is really important. And in fact, it starts now and it goes all the way through the winter months too, because as you get into the bigger stews, you get into these kinds of pasta dishes that are bigger, richer, meatier, you get into gourmet pizzas, you get into all these kinds of things. These are the kinds of wines that you need to know. And that's why I'm glad that Zinfandel Advocates and Producers, their Zinfandel experience is actually in February now. And it's a perfect time of the year to be tasting it. But you're not barbecuing as much in February. So this is when you are. And this is why this is a fantastic wine to be drinking.
For me, I mean, think about your band and song. For me, I'm thinking Jane's Addiction Oceanside.
You know what? I might switch these around, because we talked about in the last segment with the Pinots, where we talked about Pixie's Caribou. This is Caribou. This is Caribou.
Yeah.
Now, where it's the ocean side, when we're talking about the salmon from Jane's Addiction, would have been with the other one. So now let's just flip those and we're cool. It's all good.
It's all good.
It's all good. We'll listen to both those songs later. It's no big deal. And we'll listen to them loud.
But man, this is great. This is great stuff.
So why that's so fun is because I brought 2 more wines. And I want to just make this clear that Zinfandel is a great grape variety. It grows in places that you wouldn't even think it could grow. Russian River Valley, where I grew up and where you grew up, Adolfo.
Yeah.
You know, the fact is there were old vine Zinfandels there way before Pinot Noir became cool. So where you can find these places is it warm enough? And that's why the old Italians that planted the vines in Russian River Valley and Dry Creek in Sonoma County really had this focus on where does the sun or how does the fog break and where does it break first? That's where I'm going to plant these big red wines or grapes for the red wines. So the second one that we're going to taste is the Federalist, and I have not tasted this yet, but my great friends, the winemaker Brian, who makes this wine,
I'm saving this because this is too good.
What was we will finish that bottle off later, don't worry. This is the Federalist, but this is one that I have not tasted yet, and I have gotten to know the Federalist, and I think it's great.
Okay.
It has a whole story about Alexander Hamilton being the original Federalist in the United States, and how law and order all became one. But this is the first time that they've made one called Dueling Pistols. What?
Oh, so cool.
So this is one of those things we talk about.
For you listeners out there, I wish you could see the label, because it actually has 2 pistols from the really Civil War-ish type of era, plus an old eagle type of emblem.
Oops.
That iconic logo that you would probably recognize from something like the dollar or somewhere elsewhere. And it's very sort of throwback to that era in a beautiful label.
Okay, so this is Dry Creek Valley, and why?
My favorite.
Why?
Thanks
well,
to Chris.
Hey, you know what? Dry Creek Valley and Zinfandel hand in hand. I mean, it is, or Dueling Pistols in this case, but why this is worth tasting, and why I was just talking about Russian River and Pinot Noir growing near Zinfandel. That's impossible, right? No, it is not, especially in Sonoma County that has such diversity of soils, climates, and even inside of the same appellation. One of the grapes that became very popular starting in the early 90s was Syrah. And it has gone down in bottling Syrah by itself, except for those really elite ones, but it is one of the greatest blending grapes. So this is 50% Zinfandel and 50% Syrah. So here we go. So this is one-on-one, tete-a-tete, Syrah, Zinfandel together. So let's taste this. Bigger, juicier nose to it. Pretty, got a little bit more of that black raspberry kind of note to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Wild, crazy. Think about those shootouts in the old Westerns you used to watch. And the Federalist just rolls in and this is how he breaks up the whole banter, is just by pulling out a bottle of this.
Yeah. The name suits it well.
What I really love about it is it has that kind of blue tone fruit too, boysenberry. And I really get that, with the cherry, that's kind of concentrated cherry. But I love that black raspberry boysenberry effect of it. I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful wine. And this is really something that you would do where you would slow cook something. This would be like pork, some type of pork that you're kind of making like carnitas with. And I would do carnitas with this any day. Just slow cooked pork that peels off, soft, but so luscious and spicy. And it's not, that's the thing about Syrah, is that you can grow it in hot climate and cool climate conditions. Zinfandel, you can't go cool climate. Cabernet, you can't grow anywhere near cool climate conditions. It just will not work with Cabernet. It has to be hot where you grow Cabernet. because if it isn't, it's going to be that bell pepper kind of taste, and it's not going to be very good. Merlot, on the other hand, grows in kind of these kinds of similar situations where Pinot Noir, and a little bit warmer than when you grow where you grow Pinot Noir, you can grow Merlot, and it's fantastic Merlot. So what I love about this is the mouthfeel is so good. It's not as spicy as the last one. It's not as big as the last one, but it's definitely different and distinctive. And I would love to pair some stuff with this. And I think that this is a great wine to share with people. And hey, it starts a good conversation when you bring the Federalist to your party.
Yeah. It leaves you with the dry type of taste afterwards. And I'm just losing it. I don't know what band or song to pair it with.
I'm thinking Sonic Youth here.
Very good
you know,
call.
because you're always back in the college days, especially at UC Davis in the 90s, man, there's that angst. And you gotta think about the dueling.
Very sophisticated too. Yeah, I'll go Flaming Lips.
Flaming Lips.
Vaseline.
Okay. They played recently in the Bay Area. I love those guys. It's a great band that never gets as much credit as they deserve, but hella good band.
Cult following. Yeah.
Definitely cult following. So that was the Federalist Dueling Pistols. Love it. And thank you once again for the great producer bringing me a bottle of this at the event. And this is the federalistwines.com. So check this one out. Brand new, just got released. And don't forget the beautiful eagle there. And the fact is, what else would you want to drink as the elections are coming up? The Federalist, of course.
For sure. All right, Chris, news. USA Today is talking about why America is drunk on canned wine.
Ooh.
So to get controversial here, it's never too late to crack open a can of Chardonnay, apparently. This summer, millions of wine drinkers ditched cork and slipped a can of wine in to-go bags. Canned wine is booming and relatively new sector of wine business in USA. Nielsen reporting a whopping 125% increase in sales of canned wine alone in the past year. Sales went up to $14.5 million from $6.4 million the previous year. A study featured the Wine Spectator from the Texas Wine Marketing Institute found in a small focus group of wine drinkers, followed by a national poll of 21 to 31-year-old wine. Canned wine generally has the highest overall perception of wine quality based on packaging. So your thoughts on canned wine, Chris? It seems to be booming here.
Can you poke a hole in the back and then pop it like that and just put it down? Just kidding. Not like I've never done that, but actually was pretty good.
So will trendy aluminum cans of Cabernet find their way into coolers when football season starts? The $64,000 questions.
You know what? I think so. As long as the flavors of the content inside that can is good, I think it can be successful. You know, it's kind of the same thing as
Twist Off, right?
Well, Twist Off is already accepted,
but it took a while.
It took a long time for Twist Off to get accepted, and the fact is, we had to keep going back and looking at the Australians. What do they drink? About anything that they want to, and Twist Off never had an influence on them. They just said, if it's good, I want some. And so I think we're finding that also with, you know, just wines that are put in big, you know, they're kind of served like beer now. They're off of taps. And once that became popular, it was just inevitable that something in an aluminum can was going to happen. You know, it's not that different than a Boda bag, but and the fact is, when you go hiking, I would definitely take the Boda bag. That's definitely the least amount of weight. And that's the way I think about things sometimes when you have to have alcohol and you're hiking, and then once you get to that destination, you got to break it out. But aluminum cans are much lighter. They are very good in recycling, and they're easier to open. I mean, let's make it clear. You don't have to have an opener to open it.
Right. So what they're saying is the canned wine category is still in its infancy, right? And noting that the canned wine is less than 1% of total retail wine sales. It's tiny, but those sales are up 1,000%.
Crazy.
So, you know, offering canned Chardonnay and Cabernet is the fastest trending wine subcategory in the industry.
Doesn't surprise me at all. I think that as long as people are investigating wines and even new brands of wine and just really exploring, this gives them another opportunity. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's a great idea, and why not try it?
So apparently rosés are the big one with that guy.
Well, here's the deal, and why that makes complete sense. Rosés they're meant to drink fresh, and that's why they're coming out from the rosés that are out there in the market right now. The best ones are 2015 vintage. They just were. It's less than a year ago that they were made.
Right, and for the record, fresh. I've written off rosés until Chris turned me back onto them, and I love rosés now. Love them.
Amazing. So the last one we're going to taste here is so remember, we just tasted this fabulous Zinfandel from Clinker Brick. And I must say one thing about this. This is the Marisa Vineyard in Lodi. I didn't really mention that. This is from one of the vineyards that they really work with. And their own, old block, the Ghost block that they have, is amazing at Clinker Brick. I mean, really one of my favorite vineyards in America. The fact is that the second one was a combination of 50% Zinfandel and 50% Syrah, which is the Federalist, dueling pistols. And then we get into a winery called Paradox, which is, if you guys know, Duckhorn. This is a Duckhorn brand. Go figure. Paradox, Duckhorn, Migration, all of the great brands that they have that are very ducky, very ducky. In fact, what they used to do with Paradox, and this is a very funny story, is that Paradox used to have a species of the duck on the label, and it was a beautiful artistic thing of that kind of species of the duck. The fact is that they made so many wines that they ran out, they maxed out the species. So they came back and they started this new kind of look, and then they started this kind of different levels here. So the one thing is that if you find the one that has a Z on it, that is a Zinfandel, complete Zinfandel based one. If it has a C on it, it is a Cabernet based one. And if you have an S on it, it's a Syrah based one. The proprietary red wine 2013 vintage is a blend of all those grapes. Mm-hmm. So you have Zinfandel, Cab, and Syrah in here. So we're talking about some things. If you go back with Cab and Zinfandel, you look at some of the best wines of the world, and you go back to Australia. I mean, that's what they've been making for over 100 years is Cabernet and Syrah or Shiraz together. And in real life, this is very similar to that, but this is Napa Valley. And I think that that's what's so great about this is that it's a very specialty kind of wine. And Duckhorn was very brave to go out there, and this was something very different that Napa Valley did not really get at the very beginning, because it's
in a saturated market, right?
It's such a proprietary blend that it's their own signature.
Oh, wow.
They really don't give you much information about why it's so great on the back label. It's just great. And that's their deal. And I love this brand. And I think that this is the one, if you're going to a party that's coming up later this summer or into Indian summer, you really want to take something that's going to make people go, wow, what is that? And at a higher price point, that's the Paradox. So let's taste this real quick.
All right, let's do this.
This retails at $48. So you're looking at, under 50, but still, and way before The Prisoner became big, and The Prisoner is a big brand. And there's a great friend of mine, Dimitri, who was so smitten by The Prisoner, he would not drink anything else. I finally got him to start tasting wines like this, and he's good. He still likes Prisoner, but he likes this kind of wine too. And it's important for people that really love those kinds of proprietary blends. And that's a really important thing, is this is a proprietary blend. It is a very specialty blend made by Paradox and made by the Duckhorn Company that really fits a style that is really different. And this is for more... This is for those really nice steaks that that New York that you put on the grill, And you just do
Think about your band, brother.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And you're getting some blue cheese going somewhere in there. Maybe the salad has that blue cheese in there, and you need this kind of wine, and you're just feeling it.
Yeah.
Am I brainwashing you guys with the paradox? Paradox. Beautiful nose.
Musically, what are you thinking?
Well, this is a big boy. This is not a small one. This is something of note. This is I don't want to say Running with the Devil, but I'm thinking Van Halen for sure. I'm thinking something big.
That's
Eruption, something like that with Van Halen would be about right. If you go back,
you thinking houseboat on a river or on a lake or something? Is that what you're thinking?
Just throwing it down. Jamie's Crying. That might be right. Yeah. It's really concentrated. I mean, this is a big wine that just doesn't.
There's a lot going on.
It's not going to give in to just any kind of food. It needs a big one.
It does.
And it needs to be served kind of towards the end. Yeah. You know, those white wines that we tasted earlier, the Pinots that we tasted earlier, those are great to go with either lighter types of cuisine or to start an evening off with those. This one's the one I would end the evening with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and this
is another one that you could just end the whole evening with cigars around the fireplace or chocolate. That would be really good.
Of course.
Or just do something really grandiose like those steaks and just sit there. Don't say much while you're eating. You're just having these moments inside the mouth. You're cutting away and you're having this bite and you're swishing this around. You're just having these moments with your friends and your family. You're just loving this.
I'm going Radiohead. Close it out.
Can't knock on Radiohead. They just played in San Francisco too. Very good showing there. They were dark as expected, and that's why you just this is not the one to really. Depends on if it's a Sunday afternoon. I'll give it a bias here. Saturday or Sunday afternoon, you could have this in midday, but otherwise, I would definitely. This would definitely be the nighttime when it gets dark, and that's why Radiohead
around the fire. You
can't have a lot of people wearing a bunch of colors at Radiohead because it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Boy George is singing. Of course, you got to be wearing colors. You got to be flamboyant. You got to do a lot of stuff, and it's got to be big, juicy, right? Fun. This is big. This is sensual. This is deep, and you're having moments where you're not saying words because you really are having those expressions of this kind of flavor in there. And what I get out of this is much more that blackberry flavor. It's almost like that crushed blackberry with chocolate and all these kinds of wild herbs that are kind of on the back end of it. So good. Isn't it good?
Yeah. Smoking some cloves with this.
Oh. Or,
perhaps some Bauhaus with this.
Well, I mean, once again, smoking cloves. Talking Indian food. There you go, with Zinfandel too. That's another type of food that is very good with Zinfandel is Indian food, especially lamb. And when you really get into lamb and how you use those spices, and I have a great spice that I really love that is this kind of yogurt one that we make with cumin, this sauce, and that's what I dip my lamb into, and it's so fun and it's so delicious, and it needs these types of Zinfandels, either 100% Zinfandel or these types of blends and proprietary blends. And that's why Zinfandel and even Syrah, as we found out, is a great conduit to be blended with Zinfandel. Remember, Syrah really was not here until the beginning of the 90s. Cabernet really wasn't even here until the 60s. When it really became the big booming thing to plant. And we learned a lot about that because we'd already planted other red grapes called Zinfandel and Petit Syrah. So when we get into this new wave of what's hot, we kind of keep going back to Zinfandel and going, you know what? This is such a great grape. We're lucky here in California. And whenever I go to Europe and the winemakers are like, oh, Chris, so glad to have you here in Spain or Italy. Did you bring us some Zinfandel? That's the one thing they don't have. And we do.
Fascinating.
Cheers.
All right, Chris, some good news here from the LA Times. California wine country says goodbye to crop-threatening moth.
Yeah.
So a moth that sparked quarantines and expensive pest control measures in California wine country has been eradicated from the state, agricultural officials said Thursday. So little known outside the viticulture world, the European grapevine moth had threatened crops valued at $5.7 billion with the B, including wine and table grapes, berries, and some stone fruits. Since it first detected in Napa County in 2009, the discovery sparked a quarantine that eventually spanned more than 2,000 square miles in 10 counties and briefly halted exports of some fruit. But an intensive program of trapping and spraying of naturally occurring bacteria elimination and infestation by the CDFA, known by a scientific name, is Lobsia batrana, the grapefruit moth, originated in southern Europe before spreading to northern Africa and everywhere. It infests grape crops, although it must be found in berries, stone fruits, and pomegranates. The moth's several larval stages damage flowers and fruit itself throughout the process of the season. It's no easy feat to eradicate the invasive species. Growers were encouraged to remove infested fruit, set traps laced with moth-bearing pheromones, and treat crops with the stuff. Within a year, detection of insect dropped from 100,000 to about 144. And by 2014, no insects were found in traps. Wow. So it's amazing. State food and ag officials did not estimate the cost of the campaign, but ag officials in Napa County have reported that grape growers spent $45 million to deal with the moth, while government agencies spent a similar amount.
Wow. Okay, so let's face it, nature has its ways. You know, the other day I was we were outside having a nice picnic, and my boy Rupert was just saying, "Hey, Pappy, there's a huge bug here. It's a huge bug." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, right." And I walked up, about that big, and it was a huge bug, and it was this striped beetle. It was very rare. It had this texture on it that was different. I had never seen one before, and basically my family's had our house for 32 years, and I'd never seen one there. So. Can bugs move? Yes. And right now, actually, it's not just bugs, but snakes and things like that. I saw a lot of
climate change, brother.
A lot of climate change. You know what I did not have this year so far? And this is the craziest thing.
What?
No ants.
No ants.
What?
That's crazy.
What? Huh? What? I've seen some little scouts going around. There's no lines. There's nothing.
Wow.
So that's a little strange. I'm feeling a little strange about that. I'm not complaining about it, but it's different. It's not what I expect from summertime. I expect ants and I expect those things. So,
but it's amazing if the wine industry can get rid of these grape killing moths or whatever. Can we get rid of the Zika carrying mosquitoes? Right. If there's a will,
technology,
right, in terms of commerce,
technology has the ability to do that. Can we get rid of cancer? I certainly hope so. I mean, cancer is the worst thing the world has ever known so far. And can we get rid of that? I hope so. And I hope we can do these things where we can eradicate these kinds of bad bugs too. My boy Rupert really loves bugs, but he's also found out that there's some real bad bugs out there. And for the wine industry, it can really be decimating to crops. So we look forward to more technology and just more research on these kinds of bugs. And I'm so glad to hear that there's been a point where we've come and we've said the moth is taken care of for right now.
All right, Chris, we got another story here from Food and Wine. Wine shop owners scammed customers out of $45 million. So this married man told the court he spent more than $900,000, about $1 million on women that he met online. If you're under the impression that your favorite wine shop is a place of free money grubbing schemes and fiscal corruption, one California man might make you think twice. John Fox, owner of upscale Berkeley wine shop Premier Cru, pled guilty this week to scamming trusting customers out of a staggering $45 million. Fox confessed to defrauding his shop's patrons out of millions every year in order to pay off expensive home mortgage payments, credit card bills, golf course club membership fees and purchases or lease a variety of expensive cars, including Ferraris, Corvettes, Benz, Maseratis. Yeah, the married man also told Ford he spent more than $1 million basically on women. So this guy is
well, he needed the cars to get the women, if you get that equation.
Right. So what he did was, of course, he confessed that these phantom wines, based on the premise of the Premier Cru, is what the shop would contract to buy wine from Europe, then sell it to customers before it arrived in the U.S. In order to fool the customers into taking this deal, the shop owner would create false purchase orders, and the shop owner would create false, enter them into the inventory. This practice, which altogether tricked 4,500 customers, began in '93 and escalated 3 years. In the period of 2012 to 2015 alone, the shop took in $20 million from the sale of the faux bottles. So he's looking at 20 years in prison.
I'll give him more than that.
Insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, we love wine. I mean, and people that don't even love wine yet, they're going to love wine. And it's because of the uniqueness of the flavors. It's different than Coca-Cola and Pepsi and 7-Up and all these kinds of things that taste the same every single time. And you fall in love with that kind of style, then really great wines might not be for you. Basic wines might be for you. But the reason that you buy great wines is because they're so unique, and vintage does make a difference. And for frauding that and for saying things like it's just something that was made for him and putting him in labels and actually probably even counterfeiting the labels.
I'm just amazed people would do this. But
well, I mean, a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of people. I mean, Joel Peterson of Ravenswood had a great story. They just are celebrating their 40-year anniversary, that winery, and I got to go to this 40-year anniversary dinner with Joel, and he told so many good stories about his family. His family really didn't know that much about wine, but his mom kind of was enamored by it, and she started really she found the right place that started selling them the right kinds of wines that really took them to a different level very quickly. So a great wine shop owner can take you to that level, but they got to be honest people, and you got to be tasting the real stuff to really know that you're into this kind of wine, and that you really do develop your palate based on that. I mean, that's how I developed my palate, is just tasting thousands and thousands of wines, you know, through the years. And I mean, way more than that by this point, but I mean, it's been 25 years I've been doing this. But the fact is that, you know, back then it was a very small market. As people started to really love wine and get into wine, it got different. And you look at all the wine that's being sold online. I mean, you never tasted that wine. You're just believing what they say.
Yeah.
And so that's why I hope you trust people like me and my opinion in wine, and the great wine competitions that we do that are blind, you know, where we can actually tell you. And I like that. I hope you trust me and my honest opinion about these wines. But the fact is, I love it when there's more than just me. And I love why wine judging is cool. Like, you get a group of 3 or a group of 5 that all have different palates. We all love that same wine. And that shows that a lot of people across the United States will love this same wine. And if you just have one person and you're believing everything they say, especially online, as we found in good ways and in bad ways, you're taking a lot of risk there. And so don't get burned by someone like that. That guy was evil.
Well, let's not end on a downer. Chris, what do you got coming up? Any sort of events or anything?
Well, like I said, the best place to be, Labor Day weekend. There's no doubt about it. Sonoma Wine Country weekend. I'll be a part of the Somm Stars team, Sommelier Stars. And we've got a lot of great sommeliers from across the nation. Some like Cassandra Brown from Hakkasan in Las Vegas, and my great friend Nadia from down in LA, and great sommeliers. And we're going to be doing a lot of in-depth tasting.
Awesome.
We've got a little showdown between each other on that Friday. We'll be at Taste Sonoma, which will be at the McMurray Ranch, Fred McMurray. from my three sons, and that's one of the most beautiful spots in the world, especially when you're eating amazing food by all the top chefs in Sonoma County and drinking the great wines from over 125 different wineries. And you're sitting there where, Fred was, he said, "This is my place. I got to buy this place." And he did. But it's also just, it's just a place to be. The auction that will come will raise a lot of money for great charitable events, including the great scholarliness of young kids. And that really helps me as a father. And I'm just glad to be a part of that. After that, the Harvest Fair will be big. We're already working on for Flavor Napa Valley for next year as the wine director of Flavor Napa Valley. Wait till you hear more about that. That's going to be huge.
Awesome.
Working on Telluride for next year too, and what I'll be doing again in Telluride. All sorts of new stories coming out in the Cleaver Route, Sacramento Magazine, Napa Sonoma Magazine. Who else? Somm Journal. I'm doing the lead story for December. So look at a lot of those publications and you'll see what I'm writing. But also keep following my website, because we're going to be updating that a lot. We're going to go through a new kind of motion here where you're going to get a lot of these top 10s for the week. You're going to get a lot of the breakdown of what I just did at this amazing event that I just judged. And so you're going to be really in the here and now. Right now, it's great. You'll get some information about the Sonoma Wine Country Weekend from the website, so please check that out. But keep following Nerd Stalker too, because it's so great to work with Adolfo and taking him to events. And we got the amazing opportunity to hang out with Dusty Baker, the great coach for the Washington Nationals, and the fact
former coach of the San Francisco Giants,
and a star in all of our hearts, and one of the best guys. That man makes wine, and we were there right after the game against the Giants. We were there hanging out with the two pitchers and all the great stars from the Nationals, but they were tasting his wines too.
Yeah, it was an honor.
And what a fun time. So that's why follow my website and follow especially the posts that I'm doing too.
Yeah, where do we get more info from you, Chris?
That's it. I mean, Facebook is Christopher Sawyer Sommelier, and then for Twitter and Instagram, it'll be Sawyer Sommelier. A lot of new stuff coming up on Pinterest and a lot of the other things. And I just love doing the filming with Adolfo, because him and I go back to when we were about 10 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
And the fact is, when I take him to events and we talk about these things together.
Love you, brother. Love you.
I'm here for him.
Yeah.
And I'm here for
so
you
guys
too.
Check it out.
Cheers.
SawyerSomm.com. It's SawyerSomm.com. SawyerSomm.com. Make sure to check it out. I am Adolfo at NerdStalker on Twitter. NerdStalker.com. And we love talking to you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate your time. And see you next time.
Absolutely. Cheers.